I am so sorry to interrupt. We're actually live at the moment.
Oh.
So, but
Oh.
so to everyone, welcome to Inside Perspective on the fun of virtual events. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to do a very abbreviated introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to Iain and Nikita. So, to begin with, good evening, everyone. Well, my name is Sabir. I run events here at the Strand, pronouns he, him. Before we launch into discussion of Iain Thomas's newest collection, The Truth of You, poetry about love, life, joy, and sadness, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. Tonight, we are thrilled to have with us Iain Thomas for the launch of his newest book, The Truth of You. Iain is a writer and new media artist. He is the author of several books, including Every Word You Cannot Say and the internationally best-selling I Wrote This For You series. When he's not writing, drawing, or working, he spends time with his family in the outdoors in Cape Town, South Africa. Joining Iain in conversation is Nikita Gill. Nikita is a writer and poet based in the south of England. She is a National Poetry Day ambassador and has published multiple anthologies with poetry based on retelling stories from folklore and mythology. And so without further ado, I'm going to make myself disappear and turn the stage over to Iain and Nikita.
I don't know if we can manage without you.
No, he was kind of carrying the show.
I can't believe I thought we were backstage. Sorry, guys, you had to witness that.
but this is the nature of this whole thing. You're just talking into a void. Like, I mean, I have a thing here that says someone's watching from Adelaide in Australia, which is great. Hello, Adelaide in Australia. But otherwise, you know, who knows? Who knows? Maybe that person from Australia is the only one.
The KY said no. So yes, she knows.
Okay. So there's at least two people here, which is good. Did you get your wine?
Oh, I finished my wine. I was going to get another glass before the event, and then I was like, I might get a bit drunk and do something silly. But it turns out I've already done something silly. So.
Okay. No, that's fine.
How are you?
I'm fine. Someone says, anyway, carry on. Okay, I should probably read some poetry or something. I'm good. The end of the world has been fine for me, as good as it can be. No, it hasn't. It's been terrible, as it has for everyone. Should I read? I'm going to read some poetry, and then we can talk about stuff, because I think that people would like that. I hope.
Yes, they would.
I think. If this was like 2 hours later, I'd be drinking coffee. And I did this with Amanda Lovelace the other day. I was drinking coffee, but because it's 1 a.m. for me, I can have like bourbon or something. So this is the start of the book. Dear you, I want you to know that I see you. I want you to know that even if no one else does, even if you're a ghost in this bookshop or just a static floating across the screen of your computer, wherever you're reading this, I see you. I see you in the dark, and I see you in the gray. I see you as a story, as words I have spoken or may yet speak, maybe only in a memory or a dream. I want you to know that the space between the letters in this book is a space for you. So if you have the time and the inclination, you can sit here with me just for a while, and perhaps between us, we can see the truth as it stands in these moments that we share. That's how it kicks off.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to read a bunch of stuff, and then we can talk, because then I've read some stuff.
Please. I like it. I feel like it's a personal reading just for me. So
yeah, there you go. This is called A Soft Light on the Horizon. If the aliens landed and wanted to know the most beautiful word I knew, I would tell them your name. I would tell them the name of the town you grew up in. I would tell them how your mother whispered stories to help you sleep when you were a baby, and how she would take you outside and show you the moon as a way to let you know that there was an order to things, and even big things had their place, even if that place was in the night sky among the stars. I would explain that there is a way you can touch me that does not feel like anything else on earth, not like water or stone or air or fire. I would say your name 3 times, and I would say that your name is all of these things, and it is the most beautiful word I know. This is called A Child Collecting Leaves. I asked you what you missed the most, and you told me you missed the ocean. So I filled every room in the house with seashells until at night you could hear 1,000 waves whispering you to sleep. I asked you what you missed, and you told me you missed the forest. So I filled the house with pine needles until at night, when you closed your eyes, you could smell a giant forest all around you. I asked you what you missed, and you told me you missed the stars. So I took a screwdriver and made 1,000 holes in the roof. I asked you what you missed, and you told me you missed kissing. And so I kissed you, and I kissed you, and I kissed you. I kissed you in spring, summer, autumn, winter. I kissed you by the sea, and in the forest, and under the stars. Because when I kissed you in those moments, neither of us missed anything at all. Cool. I'll save some for just now. So do you have questions? Do you have any idea what you're doing? Or
I always have questions. I always
good.
have questions of poets. I always have questions, especially of new books. But we actually have a question which has come in from Mallory, who has said, how did you get started in poetry, and what does poetry mean to you? Which I think is a great first question.
Wow. Yeah, that's always an interesting one. It feels so weird to be in the Strand in my office. I'm sure everyone's done a lot of these virtual things, but like it's very weird. Like I love the Strand. It's such an incredible place. I didn't get started in poetry. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by language. I was fascinated by things like movie poster taglines. I loved the economy of words in like the movie Alien has the tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream," which is the entirety of that movie in a sentence. You know, like that's incredible, and that economy of words has always fascinated me. And I didn't really understand or know that you could have a career in the arts. And I didn't have any family friends who were creative. My father worked at the General Motors factory. My brother was very much into computers and technology, very left-brained. And I was convinced that I was going to be homeless, like because I was good at drawing pictures and I was kind of good in English class. And that was about it. And that didn't seem like a career to me. So at some point, someone said there's this thing called advertising, and there's this thing called copywriting in advertising. And so I went into that because I was like, oh, that's just like being an artist. You'll get paid and you'll be able to make whatever you want. It'll be amazing. It'll be beautiful. It'll be wonderful. And it's not like that at all. That's kind of how they sell the profession. But what happened was I did that. I have had a very successful career in advertising as a copywriter and a creative director. But at some point, I wanted to do something that I could control completely, that no one else could change in any way, shape, or form. Because that's the nature of like paid, creative work. A lot of the time is someone says, make it blue, or, make it funnier, or make it more serious, or whatever. And I just wanted to make stuff that like I could look at and go, that's exactly the way I want it to be. And so I had a crazy idea for a blog, because blogs existed back then. And I had this friend who just gotten into photography in Japan. And I said, I've got this idea for this thing called I wrote this for you, send me photographs and I'll do this. And then we waited a long time for it to become a book. And it became a book in 2011. And Michelle, my publisher, at some point sent me an email saying, holy shit, it's the #1 best-selling book of poetry on Amazon and iTunes and all these different things. And that was the first time someone had called it poetry. That was the first time that someone had said, oh, this is poetry. And I was like, is it? Like, you know, and I still have a weird relationship with the word poetry. Because like the thing that still drives me is that economy of language and that music of language. And if that's poetry, then that's fine. You know, that's okay. But it is such a loaded word, you know, in terms of like what's contained within the idea of poetry and what it means to be a poet and all of those different things. From a very idealistic kind of point of view, you know, I called this The Truth of You, and like my last like big collection was called Every Word You Cannot Say, and they both kind of speak to the same thing, which is that poetry is this kind of ultimate honesty. It is the things that if we said them in real life to other people, they would think we were insane. You know, poetry is the only space that you can say those things. And so that's what poetry is to me. It's a kind of honesty that you just aren't afforded in everyday life.
I agree. It's so interesting that you said that poetry is the thing that you wouldn't really say to somebody. What you just said, it was just really interesting because I was reading a book called The Elements of Eloquence, and it basically said that, have you ever read that book? It's actually quite interesting. But it's just it's really good because I think you would appreciate the humor in it. But they basically said in the book that when normal people fall in love, they like go out and they get a ring and they do something about it, right? Like they propose. When a poet falls in love, they sit down and they make a list of all of their loved ones' body parts, and then they attribute various things to those parts. And I have never felt more called out by a book, but at the same time, I went, oh, it's so nice that someone recognizes that, which, you know, I found that really interesting. And I found it really interesting that you said that like you didn't ever call your work poetry, other people called it poetry. Like that's very interesting. And I wanna talk a little bit more to you about what the word poet then means to you, because you said it's a very loaded word. How do you feel about it now?
Well, I think there's a great quote, and I think it's by Yeats or I don't know, some dead old white guy. But the quote is, let a man live and write, and at the end of his life, let us look at what he has written, and then we may decide if it is poetry. And that's like kind of very highfalutin way of looking at it, like in terms of like, who are we to call the things that we write poetry? Because poetry is this, you know, this idealistic kind of thing. And I think that's part of it, because if you start to call it poetry, then I feel like you're almost approaching it from the wrong angle, and this upsets people, I know, because the thing is, like, specifically in like the kind of contemporary popular poetry kind of space where we exist, where like there's a lot of people who are like, what you do isn't poetry, you know, because it's accessible, because people like it. that's the greatest sin you could make in a lot of art, is the sin of popularity, is the sin of people liking the things that you do. And so in terms of what it means to me now, I don't know. I have a weird relationship with it as well. And when I say with it, I mean actually like my career as a poet as such, because like things have changed like very much. You know, when I was a kid in my 20s, I did that thing that all poets do, which, you know, to reference your thing earlier on about, you know, when a poet falls in love, where I wrote about like, you know, 3 or 4 different relationships that I'd been in. And so my work was all about either falling in love or falling out of love, or feeling like I can die because this person has left me, or I have left this person, I've made a terrible mistake, you know. And now I'm 40. I'm 40 years old and I have 2 kids, you know. And I've been doing this for, you know, 25, how many years? I don't know, a long time, 15 years, maybe, I don't know. But the point is, I've been doing it for a long time, and so now, you know, there's a lot of poems in this book about being a parent, and being a kid, and a lot of different things have infused it. So my mom passed away during the pandemic, and she's like the last parent that we have. Like my wife and I are now orphans, you know. And it was a very traumatic thing. Like I stayed in South Africa. I was supposed to move to America, but I stayed here to be with her while she was dying. And in the end, I couldn't be with her because she was in Pretoria, which is about 16 hours away from Cape Town. I think everyone knows the story. I've told it so many times now. But I effectively snapped and decided I'm going to try and get to her. I'm going to try and like brave the blockades of COVID, and you know, I forged documents and all sorts of crazy things. And I drove 8 hours, and on hour 8 she passed. She passed while I was halfway across the country, like in the car. And I was trying to finish this book before that happened, and I kind of did. You know, I was putting it together as fast as I could because I knew after she passed I'd be too devastated, like, to work on it, you know, to like sit there and like move type around and to move words around and everything else. So leading up until that day, like I was just like, you know, 24/7 just staying awake working on this book. And so it's very much a book about like being in the maelstrom and the epicenter of life, where I have babies and I have parents who are dying, and you are kind of in the middle of it, you know, and you're just, you can see the edges of life, you know, you can see where it starts and where it ends. And so in terms of what I'm writing about, like, I'll be honest with you, like I've just had like all the creativity beaten out of me by this last year. Like, you know, it's I've done this and I'm working on a whole bunch of really interesting creative projects, but like in terms of actually writing, like I keep trying to write about what happened to my mom, and I kind of can't. Like I try, and I've written a poem, and I've tried writing almost like an article kind of thing, like some kind of confessional thing, and it's just one of those things that I think I actually need to get through to get to the other side of whatever that is. So yeah. Yeah, and I mean, look, that's a lot of waffle about life, but I mean, I think like to sound very cliche, like poetry is about life. It's this like mirror, or this, you know, you're trying to capture the things that like you can't capture. You know, poetry is a way of pointing at things that you can't point at. It's a way to try and like hold these ephemeral things. It's trying to talk about what it feels like to get a phone call in the middle of the Karoo, which is this area of flat land in South Africa, like the desert, you know, and find out your mother has died. It's about, and trying to explain like, what does that mean? And like, what is that? You have to decide what album you want to ruin, because you have to drive back for 8 hours. So what music are you going to listen to? What album will you never be able to listen to ever again? And like, it's trying to hold that. It's trying to hold that. It's trying to hold. My son skydived into a table the day before yesterday. He split his nose. Like, yeah, you know, like you've got your nose ring. Imagine someone ripped that out. Like, so, and he's 2 years old, and he's this beautiful baby. He's like this crazy little kid who loves monster trucks. And you know, how do you write a poem about nearly writing off your car so you can try and get to the hospital in time? You know, and poetry is about all of this. It's about the stranger that looks at you in the grocery store. It's about the moment that you share with someone in a lift. It's about that. It's about, you know, all of these things. And right now it's a little bit too far away for me to touch in some way, because of just everything I've gone through, I think. But everyone has. Everyone's been scarred. Everyone's been traumatized, you know, in some way, shape, or form. The amount of people who have the same story as me is just, yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway, sorry.
No, what I was just saying is that it's I find it very hard to write when I'm grieving. I can't write when I'm grieving, especially when I'm grieving someone I love and I've lost. I lost my grandfather during the the course of the pandemic, and it really hit me.
I think I remember, yeah.
It really hit. I had to
Yeah.
like get off all my social media, and I feel you. I feel you. It's there's something really devastating about not being able to say goodbye to someone who's so close to you that yeah, it just what you said
Yeah,
really hit. It really hit, and
yeah,
so sorry.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those things, like, if, like, if you're a parent, you understand that when your child comes into the world, like, you have this fundamental need to hold them. And what everyone will discover at some point is that when your parents are dying, that urge returns. You want to be there and you want to hold their hand and shepherd them across to whatever is on the other side. And that's what we need. Like, we need each other, like, at the start of life and at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the promise that we make each other. That's what, that's what family should be. That's what closeness is supposed to be about, is about the promise that you won't be alone. And my aunt and my uncle were there, and they were next to her, and I'm gonna have to, that's gonna have to be good enough for me. That and a few video calls and some voice notes. Anyway, yeah, obviously it's a big thing for me, so I'm sorry if I'm going on about it.
No,
Yeah,
it's great that you're actually sharing this, because I think poetry itself is a very vulnerable thing, and when you can't write about something, that that experience has to have hit you incredibly deeply. Watching,
yeah,
and it just, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, because this is something a few of my friends have recently gone through, and it just, I can understand what it being so big that you don't even know where to begin. I get that.
yeah, and it kind of sneaks into everything. I've got another book that I'm putting together, and which is very experimental, and I'm not even quite sure if it is poetry. But my agents were like, can you put together the intro for the book and try and give it context, for why you're doing this, because it's a very exciting book, and just give it the intro. And of course, so firstly, you have to understand that my mom died, and this is why she died, and and this is what happened, and it's this thing that just permeates your life, and yeah, but that book's very interesting. I'm writing a book with an artificial intelligence. I can't say much more about it, but it's really crazy. I'm doing a bunch of really weird and just absolutely insane things at the kind of meeting point of spirituality and artificial intelligence. And it's just it's crazy stuff. And it kind of reminds me a lot of when I started doing, I wrote this for you back on the internet, in 2007. And, one of the things that kind of drove that was this desire to introduce empathy to a piece of technology, because it's not like it is now, where there's everyone's got an Instagram poetry account or whatever. People were using blogs to keep track of soccer games. They were writing memoirs. They were it was they were recipe blogs. There was just blogs with these kinds of things. And I said I want to see if I can break this medium, fundamentally shape it into something it's completely not intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a similar kind of thing. So there's this technology called GPT-3, which is the most advanced artificial intelligence on the planet. And it feels like the same kind of thing, where I can kind of train it to write these different things, and I can train it to respond to different things. And so it's just, so one of the things I'm doing that I can talk about, there's about 5 or 6 things I can't talk about because of NDAs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But me and BT, this producer musician based in America, he's worked with like Tori Amos and Peter Gabriel and Britney Spears. He wrote the score for the Fast and the Furious. He's this incredible technologist and musician. And me and him are doing this project, and one of the projects is called The Poem of 1,000 Years. And so it's this poem that goes something like, this is the poem of 1,000 years of time slipping off the clock, of, you know, something, and it's about time. But the poem I've introduced to the artificial intelligence, and it just keeps writing it, and it just keeps creating these extra stanzas and parts of the poem, and it just keeps going forever, you know. And so the poem becomes this incredibly long thing. And so I wrote the first paragraph, and GPT-3 wrote the rest of it. And so yeah, and so it's this really like fascinating interplay between technology and creativity and spirituality and poetry, and yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that I'm really excited to share, but like I'm dying that I can't talk about it, but I will soon.
I feel you. I'm currently working on 7 different projects, can't share any of them, and like a lot of them are to do with like TV and podcasty stuff and movie stuff, and I can't share any of it, and it's all very cool. I understand, but this sounds amazing. The Poem of 1,000 Years, just that, there's like a poem just in that title. That's amazing. I'm so excited. Like I'm always excited seeing all the cool new things you're doing. So this is incredibly cool. But you know, there's something about the process of each book. And I remember talking to you about this years ago when we met in New York.
When you were late for the Strand last time, I mentioned this to Shabir. Because the last time we were at the Strand.
That time I had a plane that was late. That wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
And this time you gave me the wrong time.
Yeah, no, so it is my fault. Okay, no. Ask your question. Ask your question.
Okay, my question was, now you made me forget. See, no.
the process with books,
of writing.
The last time.
Yes, I got it. So the process of writing each book is entirely different. And you spoke a little bit about writing the process of your writing process of this book. Would it be fair to say that this is the most difficult book you've had to write because of what you were going through personally? Or was the book itself not that hard to write? It's just what happened because of the pandemic and everything that was going on that made this hard.
I said somewhere the other day that like writing seems to be something like it's harder over time. Which isn't the way it's supposed to go. It's supposed to be easy. Like I'm really, really jealous like of people like Stephen King, not just because he's like wildly successful. I mean, that's wonderful, that's great. But I feel like Stephen King wakes up every day and knows what he's gonna write. Like I feel like he wakes up and he's gonna be like, there's gonna be a crazy dog, or there's gonna be a crazy clown, or a crazy hotel, or like something terrible is gonna happen, and I'm going to tell the story of that. Whereas what I do is very reactive. And I was saying this to Amanda Lovelace the other night at the other event. Everything I do is a reaction to the last book. So I wrote this for you. It was a modular collection of photography and modular poems that all started with the word the. There was the set system and pattern to the way that the book worked. And it was always intended to be a book. Even when it was a blog, it was planned as a book. And so that did really well. And then, you know, a publisher came to me and said, listen, you know, I wrote this for you, it's done really well. Like, what if you could make any book? Like, what would you do? And so I have this natural instinct where what I want to do is I want to do the exact opposite of whatever I've just done. So if I wrote this for you as a series of individual modular poems, then I'm going to create every word you cannot say, which is one long poem in full color with red and green and yellow. And there's going to be concrete text, and there's going to be poems that are in conversation with other poems, you know, across the entire length of the book. The poems won't have names. None of them, you know, they will all kind of exist as this thing. And that's the last book I did. And so I sat down and I said, okay, what is the reaction to that? And I said, what is like just a book of poetry look like? Like if I've tried to be so experimental, if I've tried to be like very progressive and, kind of arty in terms of what I've done, like what does a collection of poetry look like, through my eyes? What if my cleverness is just to try not to be clever? And so I sat down and I said, okay, fine. What is a poetry font? What are, kind of what does poetry paper feel like? And I chose the stock, and what is this all fit together how does this all fit together to feel like effectively like a very traditional collection of poetry, right, like a reaction to the progressiveness of the last book. And yeah, I don't know. And I mean that I think that's kind of why I'm reacting the way I am now with the new stuff that I'm doing with this like technology, because that's a reaction to this now, like the traditionalism of this. Now I'm doing stuff that isn't even a book. I'm doing stuff that's music and visual and interactive and yeah, I don't know if it makes sense. Like there's always this kind of thing where if you're an author, like, well, what's your brand as an author? What's the thing that makes you you? And I'm useless at that. Like despite like my career in advertising and everything else, I'm terrible at it. Like I just make up new stuff and do new stuff all the time. And I'm sure it's not great. But like I don't know, this is just who I am. This is how I make stuff. If I could make it another way, I would.
No, there's no such thing as correct in art, though, is there? Like, this is my, this is my argument with all the gatekeepers. Is like, they try to suggest there's a right way to create art, and I'm just like, but surely that's like the antithesis of what art is. When you tell someone you can only create art the way I have decided you can create art, no one else can create art in any other way. Like, I don't know who died and made that person, the art dictator, because it just sounds, but I think what's really interesting is that you've gone down this route of like creating creating like music. You're using music and artificial intelligence and poetry, and you're putting it all together and making something very cool. Why, like, that's what I would expect from an artist that I admire, and I admire you, like, doing new things, because you've always done something new. And as long as an artist is challenging themselves and is creating something new, and is, the other thing is like the concept of risking failure. I think all of us, when we create, we risk, failing at what we do, I think. And the failures hurt, but by risking and creating something completely different from what we've done before, we are being true to the art, right? We're trying to do something honest with it.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I would say to young creative people, that living a creative life is a life spent scratching lottery tickets. Because you do not know what's going to work or what's going to resonate. And I have a slide, if I give a talk towards the end, that says like 9 out of 10 things you do will fail, and it's just true. Like you will get really excited about an idea for something, and there won't be any money to make the idea happen. You won't be able to convince your publisher to make it happen, like, or something, something else, like the person you were going to do it with loses interest, and 9 out of 10 things you do will fail, which is why you have to do 10 things.
Exactly.
And that's the next slide. You have to do 10 things. And that's kind of how many things I'm involved with right now. Like, because I'm sure some of them will fail. They'll fail horribly. And that's fine, the greatest risk you can take as a creative person is not making things.
Yeah.
And the greatest tragedy, I think, is like, I know a lot of people who come up to me and they go, I've got this idea for this crazy thing. I've had this idea for years. And when I get the time, I'm going to make it, and I'm gonna take some, I'm gonna do something, and it's gonna be incredible. And a year later, they're still talking about it. And the thing is, like, the idea might not be great. And the trick to being a creative person is to get the ideas out of your head as fast as possible to make room for new stuff. Because the brain is a great place to have ideas. It's a terrible place to keep them, Yeah. Someone says, if it's not great, why do we have so many fans? And you're both idols for so many people. Well, thank you very much. I think, the truth of that is we're just both terribly insecure people, and that just comes with part of the territory. Forgive me for speaking on your behalf, but yeah.
We're artists. In general, we have that imposter syndrome, and I swear you spoke about this at one of the other events that we did together, where you said, one of these days someone is going to they're going to find out, and they're going to show up, and they're going to knock on our doors, and they're going to say, no, you're a fraud. What are you? So
That's not like the way I put it is, someone's going to look up from the book one day and go, wait, this guy's an idiot. Why are we reading these books? Hey, everyone, this guy's a moron. Why are we reading it? It makes no sense. And then they'll get the pitchforks and the torches and yeah, I think it's just inherent. I mean, I admire artists who can kind of like buy into themselves like completely and just be like, yes, I am this person. I embody this like creative idea. I can't. I'm just like constantly apologizing for who I am. I'm sorry I wrote that book. I didn't mean to. I'm ready. And I can't help it. Like it's just fundamental to who I am. I can read some more stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've got about 19 minutes, I think, and it would be really great to hear more from the book. Also, like, after you finish the reading, it would be great to hear, like, I'd like to ask you a few questions around the book, if that's okay, because I feel like I've been talking to you around it. So
yeah. No, that's fine. This is called A State of Being. I will become a plant that only grows in certain parts of the world at certain times. I will become a bird no one's ever seen before, and I will be born and die without anyone ever knowing I existed. I will become a secret memory in someone's head, a surprising thought that they do not understand, and they won't know where it comes from. I will become rising strings in a song in the background of your favorite movie when two people kiss. I will become the little scrunched up receipt at the bottom of your bag, and I will become the packet of sugar you rip open when you have coffee at your favorite cafe. I will become the moon, and I will become the light shining through the leaves of the tree you climbed when you were young. I will become one beat of your heart, and it will be the best I have ever been. Thank you.
Every single poem read is so beautiful. Like, no one's ever going to look up from one of your books and go, hey, this guy's an idiot. That's never going to happen to you. It'll happen to me, but it won't happen to you.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I sometimes make the mistake of reading the reviews. Like, because I haven't had a new book for like 2 years. So the golden rule, dear audience, never read the reviews. Because if you take the good ones seriously, you have to take the bad ones seriously, or whatever. So never, ever read the reviews. This is called A Way to Touch the Future. I read this online, but I'll read it again quickly. Hug your children, because when you hug them, you're hugging everyone they will ever be. You're hugging them on their first day of school and their last. You're hugging them when they get their first promotion, when they get fired, and when they don't know how they'll pay the rent. You're hugging them when someone says, I love you on their wedding day, and when someone breaks their heart. When you hug your children, you are hugging them when they are in the dark, and when they are lost, and when they are not sure how they'll get home. When you hug your children, you are hugging them forever. You are hugging them here, and you are hugging them on the day after they cannot hug you anymore, and every day after that one. So hug them tightly, and hug them a little bit longer than you need to. So that's very much, so that's about my mom more than it is my kids. Yeah. This is called A Line at a Time. I was writing this poem when the teacher told me it was the end of the test. And I was writing this poem when my mother died. I was writing this poem when my son was born, and on the way to the hospital, I was underlining the most important bits. I was writing the poem when the water dried up and when the lights went out. And now with the army in the streets, I am still writing the poem. Because the poem is my daughter and sunlight and my hands and the blue of the ocean. And when I die, when they bury me, and when my children's children do not know my name, I will still be writing this poem. Okay, I'll do one more and then we can do questions. Let's see. There is a kind of secret strength. It lives in you and no one, not even you, knows it's there. It lives inside of you, waiting for the day it's needed, waiting for the darkest hour of the darkest night. And then when you are defeated, when your heart is so broken, you don't know if it can ever be put back together again. It whispers, hello, you don't know me, but I am here. Cool, okay. Are there more questions? Are there still people here?
I feel like, I mean, if no one else has questions, I have questions.
Yeah.
It would be a great time for you guys to like ask any questions because we've got some time left. But my first question about this book is these poems are really, it's a hard thing to do as a poet, to hold space for grief, whilst at the same time finding place for resilience. And I think when I was listening to you read, that's the first thing I thought, the way that you have honored sadness and tragedy and grief, whilst at the same time making room for hope. And I think that's a really hard thing to do as a poet. And like Mary Oliver does this very well, and you do this very well. And I feel like,
gosh, she's so good, isn't she?
Oh, she is, and so are you. And I feel the same thing when I read both of your pieces, both of your books, is that you don't do this thing, which I get very frustrated by, where either everything is very, very sad, and I read a lot of poems where things are very, very sad and everything is falling apart and everyone's gonna die and it's terrible. Or things are so happy and everything is gonna be okay. Like it's really hard to toe that line where you're able to do both. And especially in that poem where you spoke about, I'm writing this poem, and you talk about the immortality of the poem versus the poet. I thought that that was something really profound. And did you like, what was your thought process when you were writing that piece? Were you thinking about immortality of the poem, or were you thinking about how you are mortal as a poet? Because you encompass so many things.
You know, there's a poem in the book that says sometimes you have to write like you're guiding someone out of a burning building, because sometimes you are, you know. And I think that's kind of our job as creative people, as poets, as whatever you want to call it. Where if you find yourself in a space, and if you can muster the strength to find your way out, you should draw a map, you know. You should write down how you got out. And so there's a lot of time when I have that insecurity complex, which we're talking about, you know, like when I'm like, well, why aren't I selling as many books as that person? Or, you know, everything I do, like, why didn't people respond to this? Or why, like, you know, I feel like I can't write, or maybe like I'm deluding myself or whatever. And so, and then there's this voice at the back of your head that says, no, just keep writing. You know, like you were writing in high school when the teacher said that the test is over and you'd finished your exam, you know, after 10 minutes, because you had no idea what the answers were. So you were sitting there drawing and writing poetry. You know, you when you were rushing your wife to hospital, you were, you know, thinking about like the poetry of that moment and what it meant. You know, so that voice comes and says, no, like you're still writing. And I mean, it's one of those things that I've like come around to again and again in my life. It's like, I don't really have a choice. I could do many other things. I could be a gardener. I could do all sorts of stuff, I reckon. But like I come back to writing, you know. Not right now. And like now I'm in like this weird place. But I know I'll be back. You know.
It's
You have guided me out of several burning buildings, and for that I thank you. And thank you, Lucia. Sorry, comment from the
I think that's really beautiful.
people.
You've guided me out of several burning buildings. Oh, there's something really beautiful here from Mallory as well, who said, "Thank you so much for the beauty of your words. They have touched me from the very first book so long ago and will continue."
That's really beautiful. And that's there are a lot of young poets who call me dad, just so everyone knows.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say now? I've completely derailed my train of
Is it because I called you dad? It's because that's what it was, wasn't it? No.
Do you know what the highest accolade is?
What's that?
Highest accolade, the thing that I value the most, is the amount of social workers and teachers and nurses that come to my readings. Like these people who just fundamentally care about other people. And it might be a thing just with like poetry, that like this kind of person who is attracted to this profession that is like about other people, you know, and that they just might, all of them might be into poetry or whatever. But like I meet them at like my readings and stuff like that. And I haven't had a reading in like, you know, a year and a bit or whatever it is. But like there's this pattern, and like there's this reoccurring thing in the people who find my work. The people who find my work have been through something, have found their way out, and a lot of them look for ways to help other people out of similar kinds of things. And it's the most amazing thing. Like I've won awards. Like I have like a list of awards that I've won, and I've sold like shitloads of books, and I've done all these incredible things or whatever. But it sounds cliche, and I realize it sounds cliche, but like that matters. Like the kind of person that comes to a reading of mine. So yeah. Thank you to all of those people.
But it is amazing. It's amazing that you know, we owe a lot to our nurses and our social workers and the people who hold our world together, I would say. I feel like it's really important. And the fact that they find hope in those words, it's such a moving, powerful thing. I know you contributed poems to a book about the pandemic quite close to the start, and you helped raise money. And I thought that was
that's it. That's in there. That I couldn't find it right now, but like it's called "There Will Be a Day After." Yes. And I just remember at the start, like right before the pandemic started, like I was so sick of the news. I was like, oh, it's Donald Trump and Brexit again. Like even in Africa, even on the tip of Africa, every night, like the news is the same. Donald Trump, Brexit, Donald Trump, Brexit. And I'm like, oh. And then like after COVID, I was like, oh, I'd kill for Donald Trump and Brexit. I wouldn't ever wish that back on anyone. But like, but there's a poem in there called "There Will Be a Day After," and it's all about the fact that like there's going to be this day, and it's probably not as far away as people think. Like maybe it's months away, you know, where you will wake up and you won't think about it.
Yeah.
Like it will not be the thing like that you think about first. You will think about something else. You will worry about like, you know, did you take the rubbish out? Did you, you know, do you have milk in the fridge? Like, are you late? Are you late for something? That'll be the thing that you think about, and you won't notice. You know, if you're lucky, you will. Like, but otherwise, yeah. Anyway, any more questions?
There is a really lovely thing that Hillary has said. I have wanted to be a poet for so long. I feel like the words are within me, and both of you inspire me so greatly. Thank you, Hillary. I am a high school English teacher, and I want so much to
There
be
we go.
I am a high school English teacher, and I want so much to be able to express myself as eloquently and universally as you do. I have realized that I can't force the words. When my soul is ready to speak, it will. In the meantime, I will take refuge in your words. I could
That's really
cry.
beautiful. You should cry. It's worth crying about. Where are you reading this? I can't read these.
These are it's in the Q&A section. They're coming to me. And I thought this was really, really, I don't know. There's something about what you just said, Hillary, that was really moving. The words will come. You don't have to force them. But I mean, I'm sure, Iain, you have like advice on like just writing every single day, because it's what
I
I do.
used to say that.
Yeah.
I used to say that. Like I still think that you should write regularly. But I also know that like if you're a single mom with 2 jobs, like you can't write every day, you know, like that's just the nature of it. There's a social worker in the audience. Yes, I knew it. And an English teacher. And listen, like the English teacher thing, like that is an important job. And I know lots of people say that and they don't pay you enough, you know, it's one of those things. But like a really important moment in my life was when because I wasn't great at English. Like there's obviously this idea that I was like, obviously like just exceptional, but I wasn't. Like I really sucked at school. Like I was very worried about becoming homeless and just like failing miserably at everything. And there was this English teacher who hated me, Mr. Thompson. He's still alive, but he won't hear about this. And one day we had to do this exercise where we had to read a poem. Like I just had to read it. And I took this poem home. And obviously I chose Iain Thomas, like Rage Against the Dying of the Light.
Yeah.
Not just because he's my grandfather, like, but because like I really liked it. He's not my grandfather. Just
I was like, I call him out. No, I'll just let it carry on.
But I read it. And afterwards he came up to me and he said, it was the most beautiful reading like of that poem he'd ever heard. And it was the most sincere thing. And like, you know, like you just have such a profound effect on people and you shape their lives, you know, and it's the work of the universe to teach. And yeah, I can't remember what we're talking about.
No, we were talking about Hillary and the beautiful thing that she
said. Writing every day. Yeah. I write, like everyone's got like 10,000, 20,000, sometimes 50,000 like terrible words in them. Like get them out, like get rid of them, and then you'll get to the good stuff.
I never used to write every day. I was more like sporadic with it, but recently I've just been writing every single day. Like I wake up first thing in the morning, and the first thing I do is write.
That's great.
And it's just
I've survived is there are these I don't know if they're international, but there's these chocolates called chuckles, and they're like little chocolate balls around like nuts or whatever. And bags of chuckles and Netflix is how I got through the pandemic, and like my family survived. I went through the whole baking thing for a while. I made pizza bases, but chuckles and Netflix. In terms of like writing every day, like I just can't right now. Like I'm trying. Like I keep the fragments. Like I have the notes app open on my phone all the time, and I write down like just the seed, because that's all you need. Like, and I always say this to people: the more you listen, the more you hear. You know, like go through life and just listen to your own internal monologue, listen to the people around you. You just need to write down the little seeds, and then when you get time, rare as that is for people these days, like, you know, then look at them and try and grow them and try and turn them into something. You know.
I think that's
anyway,
so
where are we?
We've actually got like exactly 1 minute, and I think that 1 minute is good to read what Catherine has said over here. There is such beauty and power in being able to capture the human experience. Thank you both for putting words to these feelings. Why is
It's a
everything
pleasure.
cry?
It's so unfair, like, because like you can't see the people. Like it's just like being on a weird Skype call where occasionally you're like, oh yeah, there's other people here. The worst was I had to give a talk the other day at a conference, and like it wasn't in conversation, it was just a talk. It was a half an hour talk talking to a blank screen.
Oh gosh.
And like it was terrible because like you feed off the energy of the audience, and like you're like, oh, you know, people think this is funny, or people think this is moving, or people, you know, whatever. And it was just the black void and the little green light of the webcam, and like there was like 1,000 people or something crazy. Like you have no idea if people like care at all about what you're saying. But so it's good to have you here in place of those people. I'm assuming there must be at least 5 or 6 or 7 people out there, and I'm grateful for all of you.
This has been really great. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Iain. I've really enjoyed
Thank you for making it. I'm really sorry about lying to you about the time. If your email had worked, you would have gotten the email from Andrews and you would have seen like the things. I can't be relied on to provide accurate information.
Well, thank you both so much for a marvelous conversation. Thank you to our audience for spending your evening with us. If you haven't already picked up a copy of Iain's book, I've dropped a link in the chat. I've also dropped a link to Nikita's books as well, if you'd like to check those out. And again, on that note, thank you, Iain. Thank you, Nikita, for a fantastic, intimate, thoroughly enjoyable conversation. It was a great way to spend the night. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.